Michael had been dreaming about this moment for almost 3 years. Ever since he started looking for a new place to live, he had one specific thing on his wish list that most people would think was crazy. He didn't want a big house or a fancy neighborhood. He wanted a lake. His own private lake where he could fish whenever he wanted, without dealing with crowded public spots or paying for expensive fishing club memberships. His dad had taken him fishing when he was a kid, and those were some of his best memories. The quiet mornings, the patience it took to wait for a bite, the excitement when you finally caught something. As an adult with a stressful job in IT, Michael found himself craving that peace more and more. He wanted a place where he could just walk outside with a fishing rod and leave all his worries behind. After months of searching and looking at properties that were either too expensive or too far from his work, he finally found it. A beautiful 5-acre property on the edge of town, with a half-acre lake right in the middle of it. The previous owner had been a fisherman too, and he'd kept the lake in perfect condition. It was stocked with bass and bluegill, and there was even a small wooden dock that stretched out into the water. The price was higher than Michael wanted to pay, but he couldn't let it go. He made an offer, went through weeks of paperwork and inspections, and finally the house was his. The day he got the keys, he didn't even unpack most of his boxes. He just set up his bedroom, found his fishing gear, and promised himself that the next morning, he'd wake up early and fish in his own lake for the first time. That Saturday morning, Michael's alarm went off at 5:30. He actually woke up before it rang because he was too excited to sleep. He made a quick cup of coffee, grabbed his favorite fishing rod, and headed down to the dock. The sun was just starting to come up, and the whole lake was covered in this beautiful golden light. The water was completely still like glass. It was perfect. Michael cast his line and just stood there feeling more relaxed than he'd felt in years. This was it. This was exactly what he'd been dreaming about. No crowds, no noise, just him and the water and the fish. He could do this every single morning if he wanted to. This was his lake. He'd been fishing for maybe 20 minutes when he heard footsteps behind him. Heavy, fast footsteps like someone was in a hurry. He turned around and saw a woman walking toward him. She looked like she was in her 60s, and she was wearing this bright yellow vest that said HOA President on it in big letters. She had her phone out and she was taking pictures of him. "Excuse me," she called out in this sharp voice. "What do you think you're doing?" Michael was confused. "I'm fishing," he said, thinking maybe she was just being friendly and wanted to chat. "You can't fish here," the woman said, getting closer. She kept taking pictures with her phone. "This is private community property. You're trespassing." Michael laughed a little because he thought maybe she was joking or confused. "No, this is my property. I own this land. I just bought this place." The woman stopped and put her hands on her hips. "I'm Patricia Drummond, president of the Homeowners Association, and I've been in charge of this community for 12 years. I know every single inch of this property, and this lake is community property." Michael shook his head. "I'm sorry, but that's not right. I have all the paperwork. This lake is on my property. I own it." Patricia's face got red. "That's impossible. This lake is clearly visible from our community trail." She pointed to a walking path that ran along the edge of his property, maybe 50 feet away from the lake. "If we can see it from the trail, it's community property. That's how it works." "That's not how property ownership works," Michael said, trying to stay calm. "I have a deed that shows I own this entire piece of land, including the lake." Patricia wasn't listening. She was already dialing a number on her phone. "We'll see about that. I'm calling the sheriff right now. You're fishing illegally on community property, and you're trespassing." Michael couldn't believe what was happening. He'd been in his new house for less than a week, and now he was being accused of trespassing on his own property. "Ma'am, you're making a mistake. This is my land. I can show you the documents." But Patricia had already turned away and was talking on her phone. "Yes, hello. I need to report someone trespassing and fishing illegally on HOA property. Yes, I'll wait here." Michael just stood there holding his fishing rod, watching this woman call the police on him for fishing in his own lake. His peaceful morning was completely ruined. He thought about walking back to his house and getting his property papers, but he figured he should probably wait for the police to show up so he could clear this whole thing up. He reeled in his line and sat down on the dock. Patricia stood about 20 feet away, watching him like he was some kind of criminal. She made another phone call and he heard her say something about, The trespasser is still here, and make sure everyone knows about this." About half an hour later, a sheriff's car pulled up near his house. A deputy got out and walked down toward the lake. He looked young, maybe in his 30s, and he seemed confused about why he was there. Patricia rushed over to him before he could even say hello to Michael. She started talking fast, explaining how the lake was community property and how Michael was trespassing and fishing without permission. She pulled out her phone and showed him the pictures she'd taken, like they were proof of some crime. The deputy looked at Michael. "Sir, can you tell me what's going on here?" Michael stood up. "I just bought this property a week ago. This is my lake. I have all the paperwork in my house. I can show you." "He's lying," Patricia interrupted. "This lake has been visible from our community trail for decades. That makes it HOA property. It's in our bylaws." The deputy held up his hand. "Ma'am, let me handle this." "Sir, if you have your property documents, I'd like to see them." Michael walked back to his house with the deputy following him. He grabbed the folder with all his closing paperwork, his deed, and the property survey. He brought everything back down to the lake and spread it out on the dock. The deputy looked through everything carefully. He checked the survey map, which clearly showed that Michael owned all 5 acres, including the lake. He looked at the deed. He even checked the legal description of the property. "Ma'am," the deputy said, turning to Patricia, "these documents clearly show that this gentleman owns this property, including the lake. He has every legal right to fish here." Patricia's face turned even redder. "That's impossible. I've been running this HOA for 12 years. I know this community better than anyone. This lake has always been visible from our trail. That means it falls under HOA oversight." The deputy shook his head. "Being visible from a trail doesn't mean the HOA owns it. This is private property, Mr. Chen, Michael Chen," Michael said. "Mr. Chen owns this lake legally. There's no violation here." Patricia crossed her arms. "I want you to file a report anyway. The HOA will be looking into this. We're going to investigate this situation, and I can promise you that we will be taking legal action. This is not over." The deputy sighed but said he'd file a report about the call. He apologized to Michael for the confusion and told him to have a good day. Then he left. Patricia stood there for another minute staring at Michael like she was trying to memorize his face. "You haven't heard the last of this," she said. Then she turned and walked away. Michael sat back down on his dock and looked out at his lake. His coffee was cold now, and the sun was already up high in the sky. The peaceful morning he'd been dreaming about for 3 years had turned into a nightmare in less than an hour. He had no idea that this was just the beginning. Michael thought maybe that would be the end of it. He hoped Patricia would go back and check the actual HOA records and realize she'd made a mistake. Maybe she'd even apologize. He was wrong. 3 days later, he came home from work to find a thick envelope taped to his front door. Inside was a letter on official HOA letterhead. It was from Patricia, but this time she had signed it as HOA President and Community Oversight Director. The letter said he needed to immediately stop all fishing, activities on disputed community property until the matter could be resolved. It said if he continued fishing, he would be fined $500 per day. Michael read the letter twice because he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Disputed property? There was nothing disputed about it. He owned the lake. He had a deed that proved it. How could they fine him for using his own property? He called the number at the bottom of the letter. A woman answered and said she was the HOA secretary. When Michael explained why he was calling, she put him on hold for almost 10 minutes. Then Patricia picked up. "Mr. Chen," she said in this cold voice, "I assume you received our cease and desist letter." "I did, and I don't understand it," Michael said, trying to stay calm. "I showed the deputy my property papers. I own this lake. The HOA board has reviewed the situation, and we believe those documents are incorrect or possibly fraudulent," Patricia said. "We have records showing that lake was designated as community recreational space in the original development plans from 1987. "Then your records are wrong," Michael said. "My property was never part of the HOA. It was sold separately." "We'll let the courts decide that," Patricia said. "In the meantime, you need to stop using the lake. If I see you out there again, you'll be fined. Have a good day, Mr. Chen." She hung up before he could respond. Michael stood in his kitchen holding the phone, feeling completely helpless. This was insane. He'd spent his life savings on this property, and now some HOA president was threatening to fine him for using it. That weekend, Michael decided to go fishing anyway. It was his property, and he wasn't going to let Patricia bully him into staying away from his own lake. He woke up early on Saturday morning, made his coffee, and headed down to the dock just like before. He'd been fishing for about 15 minutes when he noticed someone on the community trail. It was an older man wearing the same yellow HOA vest Patricia had worn. The man was standing there with a clipboard writing something down. Then Michael noticed someone else further down the trail, a woman also with a clipboard, also watching him. They were watching him fish on his own property and taking notes. Michael felt his stomach drop. This wasn't just Patricia being difficult. She'd organized other people to help her harass him. He tried to ignore them and focus on fishing, but it was impossible to relax knowing people were standing there watching his every move. After about an hour, he gave up and went back inside. The whole point of having his own lake was to have peace and quiet, and now he couldn't even enjoy it. 2 days later, another letter arrived. This one said he was being fined $5,000 for unauthorized use of community amenities. There was also a second fine for $3,000 for creating a nuisance and disturbing community peace. The letter said the fines would continue to add up every week until he stopped fishing and agreed to let the HOA properly assess the property. Michael was furious. $8,000 in fines for fishing in his own lake? This had to be illegal. He called a lawyer that day. The lawyer listened to his story and said it sounded like harassment, but fighting an HOA could be expensive and take months. He'd need to pay a retainer of $5,000 just to get started. Michael didn't have that kind of money sitting around. He'd used most of his savings for the down payment on the house. He told the lawyer he'd think about it and call back. Over the next week, things got worse. Patricia started posting about Michael on the community Facebook group. She never used his name, but she made it clear who she was talking about. She wrote posts saying new resident illegally claiming ownership of our community lake and suspicious newcomer trespassing on HOA property. She encouraged other residents to report any suspicious activity they saw. Michael started getting dirty looks from neighbors when he checked his mailbox. One morning, someone had written "thief" on his driveway in chalk. Another time, he found a note on his car that said, "You don't belong here." The worst part was that most of these people had no idea what was really going on. They just believed whatever Patricia told them. She'd been HOA president for 12 years, so they trusted her. Why would she lie? Michael tried posting his side of the story on the Facebook group, but his post was deleted within an hour. He got a message from Patricia saying he wasn't allowed to post on the community page because his property wasn't technically part of the HOA, so he wasn't a member. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so frustrating. Then came the day that pushed things too far. Michael came home from work on a Tuesday afternoon. He was tired and stressed, and all he wanted was to sit on his dock for a few minutes and decompress. But when he walked down to the lake, he couldn't believe what he saw. Patricia was on his dock. Not near it, on it. She was standing there with 2 other people who were wearing HOA vests, and they were hammering a sign into his wooden dock. The sign said, "No trespassing, show property, violators will be prosecuted." "What are you doing?" Michael shouted, running down to the dock. "Get off my property!" Patricia didn't even look startled. "We're posting proper signage on community property," she said calmly. "This should have been done years ago. This is my dock. You're vandalizing my property." Michael pulled out his phone and started recording video. "This dock is on HOA property," Patricia said to the camera like she was making some kind of official statement. "We have every right to be here. You need to leave right now or I'm calling the police," Michael said. Patricia smiled. "Go ahead. We'll be filing a report too. You've been harassing HOA board members trying to do their jobs." Michael called the sheriff's office right there. He told them people were trespassing on his property and vandalizing his dock. The dispatcher said someone would be there soon. While they waited, Patricia and the 2 board members just stood there on his dock. They didn't even try to leave. They acted like they had every right to be there. When the sheriff's deputy arrived, Michael was relieved to see it was the same guy from before. The deputy remembered the situation. He walked down to the dock and looked at the sign they'd hammered in. "Ma'am, we've been through this," the deputy said to Patricia. "This is private property. You can't put signs here. We're protecting community assets, Patricia said. This lake has been used by the community for decades. We're just making sure everyone understands the boundaries. The boundaries are clear. This is Mr. Chen's property. You need to remove that sign and leave, or I'll have to cite you for trespassing. Patricia's face went red again, just like the first time. This is ridiculous. We're the victims here. This man is trying to steal community property and you're taking his side. I'm not taking anyone's side, the deputy said. I'm following the law. The property records are clear. Now remove the sign and leave the property. The two board members looked nervous. They hadn't said anything this whole time, and now they were starting to realize they might actually get in trouble. They pulled the sign out of the dock and started walking away. Patricia stood there for another minute, staring at Michael with pure anger in her eyes. You're making a big mistake, she said quietly. The HOA has lawyers, good ones, and we will get that lake back, whatever it takes. Then she turned and walked away. After they left, Michael sat down on his dock and put his head in his hands. This was supposed to be his dream property, and it had turned into a nightmare. He couldn't fish without being watched and harassed. His neighbors thought he was some kind of criminal. And now Patricia was threatening legal action. That night, Michael made a decision. He was going to hire that lawyer, even if it meant going into debt. He couldn't let Patricia win. This was his property, his lake, his dream, and he was going to fight for it. Michael called the lawyer first thing Monday morning. Her name was Jennifer Rodriguez, and she specialized in property disputes and HOA cases. When he told her what was happening, she went quiet for a moment. Let me get this straight, she said. Your property was never part of the HOA. You have a clear deed showing you own the lake, and they're still threatening to fine you. That's exactly what's happening, Michael said. And it's getting worse every day. Jennifer sighed. I've dealt with overzealous HOAs before, but this sounds extreme. Can you come to my office this afternoon? Bring every document you have related to the property. That afternoon, Michael sat in Jennifer's office and spread out all his paperwork. The deed, the survey, the closing documents, the title insurance, everything. Jennifer went through each page carefully, taking notes. Your paperwork is solid, she said. There's no question you own this property. The survey clearly shows the lake is within your boundaries. The deed is legitimate. You even have title insurance that would have caught any issues. So what do I do? Michael asked. They're claiming they're going to sue me, and they're making my life miserable. Jennifer leaned back in her chair. First, we need to respond to their cease and desist letter with our own letter. We'll make it very clear that you own this property and their threats are baseless. Second, I want to do some research on this HOA and specifically on Patricia Drummond. Something about this doesn't add up. What do you mean? Michael asked. In my experience, HOA presidents don't usually go this hard after someone unless there's something personal going on, Jennifer said. Let me dig into the history of your property and see what I can find. Michael hired Jennifer that day. It cost $3,000 up front, with more fees to come if things went to court. It hurt his bank account, but he didn't see any other choice. Over the next week, Jennifer sent a strong letter to the HOA explaining that Michael owned the property legally, and that any further harassment could result in a lawsuit against them. She made it clear that their fines had no legal basis and wouldn't be paid. But Patricia didn't back down. Instead, she escalated. The next HOA newsletter that went out to all the residents had a full article about property disputes and neighbors who try to steal community resources. Again, she didn't use Michael's name, but everyone knew who she meant. The article talked about how some people move into nice communities and immediately try to take advantage of hardworking HOA members. Michael started getting more hostile looks from neighbors. Someone left a bag of trash on his driveway. Another person let their dog use his front yard as a bathroom and didn't clean it up. When Michael tried to talk to people at the mailboxes, they'd walk away without saying anything. The worst part was the constant surveillance. Every time Michael went near his lake, there were people on the trail watching him. They'd stand there with their phones out, recording him. Sometimes there were 2 or 3 people at once. It felt like living in a prison. Michael called Jennifer and told her what was happening. This is harassment, she said. Document everything. Take pictures, save emails, keep all the letters. We're building a case here. A case for what? Michael asked. For suing them back, Jennifer said. If we can show a pattern of harassment, we might be able to get damages. But I'm still researching. I have a feeling there's more to this story. A few days later, Jennifer called Michael. She sounded excited. I found something interesting. Can you come to my office tomorrow? The next day, Michael sat in Jennifer's office while she pulled up information on her computer. I've been digging into the history of your property, she said, and I found out something very interesting about Patricia Drummond. She turned her computer screen so Michael could see. It showed a real estate listing from 2 years ago. It was his property. The lake, the house, everything. I don't understand, Michael said. What am I looking at? This is when your property was first listed for sale, Jennifer said. The previous owner was asking $420,000. Look at the showing history. She scrolled down and pointed to a line on the screen. Patricia Drummond viewed this property 3 times. And she made an offer. Michael leaned forward. She tried to buy my house? She did. And her offer was rejected. Jennifer clicked to another document. She offered $220,000. That's $200,000 less than asking price. And look at the note her agent added. Michael read the note. It said, buyer believes lake should be community property, offering price based on home value only, not including lake acreage. She tried to buy my property for cheap by claiming the lake shouldn't count, Michael said slowly. Exactly, Jennifer said, and when her offer was rejected, she apparently decided she'd try another approach. Jennifer pulled up more documents. After her offer was rejected, the property sat on the market for another year. Then your predecessor took it off the market. It didn't go back on the market until 6 months ago, when the owner decided to retire and move to Florida. That's when you bought it. So Patricia has been mad about this for 2 years, Michael said. It gets better, Jennifer said. She pulled up what looked like meeting notes. I requested copies of HOA board meeting minutes for the past 3 years. It's public record. Look what Patricia said in a meeting 18 months ago. She pointed to a highlighted section. Michael read it out loud. The lake property is being illegally occupied. We need to find a way to acquire it for the community. The previous owner refused to negotiate, but eventually he'll have to sell. We should be ready to make an offer when that happens. She's been planning this, Michael said. There's more, Jennifer said. She showed him another section from a different meeting. This is from 8 months ago, right after you bought the property. Patricia didn't know who bought it yet. She said, and I quote, we need to pressure the new owner into donating the lake to the HOA. If we make it clear that the community expects access, they might cooperate to avoid conflict. Michael felt sick. She's been planning to harass me this whole time. And here's the smoking gun, Jennifer said. She pulled up one more document. This is from a meeting 6 months ago, right after you moved in. Someone asked Patricia what the plan was for acquiring the lake. She said, we'll make life difficult enough that they'll want to sell cheap. Nobody wants to live somewhere they're not welcome. Michael stared at the screen. She admitted she was going to harass me to make me sell? In official meeting minutes that are part of the HOA's permanent record, Jennifer said. And here's the thing. I don't think the other board members really understood what she was planning. They probably thought she just meant negotiating or making a fair offer. I doubt they knew she was going to call the police on you or threaten you with fake fines. Can we use this? Michael asked. Absolutely, Jennifer said. This shows a pattern of malicious intent. She's not trying to protect the HOA. She's trying to steal your property because she's mad you got it instead of her. What do we do now? Michael asked. Jennifer smiled. Now we go on the offensive. I'm going to file a countersuit against the HOA and against Patricia personally. We're going to sue for harassment, trespassing, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. And I'm going to send all this evidence to the HOA's insurance company. Why the insurance company? Michael asked. Because HOA insurance doesn't cover intentional misconduct by board members, Jennifer said. When the insurance company sees that Patricia has been doing this on purpose for personal reasons, they're going to refuse to cover the HOA's legal costs. And when the other board members realize they might have to pay for Patricia's vendetta out of their own pockets, they're going to turn on her fast. You really think this will work? Michael asked. I've seen it before, Jennifer said. HOA board members are usually just volunteers trying to keep the neighborhood nice. When they find out the president has been using HOA resources for a personal grudge, they shut it down immediately. Nobody wants to get sued because their president went rogue. Michael felt hope for the first time in weeks. How long will this take? A few weeks to file everything and serve them, Jennifer said. After that, we'll see how they respond. But my guess? Once the other board members see this evidence and hear from their insurance company, things are going to change very quickly. What do I do in the meantime? Michael asked. Keep documenting everything, Jennifer said. Don't engage with Patricia or anyone else from the HOA. Don't go on the Facebook group. Just live your life, fish in your lake, and let them dig themselves deeper. Every time they harass you now, it's just more evidence for our case. Michael left Jennifer's office feeling better than he had in a month. Finally, someone was on his side. Finally, someone believed him. And finally, Patricia was going to face consequences for what she'd been doing. But he also knew Patricia wasn't going to give up easily. And he was right. Jennifer filed the countersuit 2 weeks later. She didn't just go after the HOA. She named Patricia personally in the lawsuit for harassment, defamation, and something called malicious prosecution. The lawsuit asked for $50,000 in damages, plus all of Michael's legal fees. The same day Jennifer filed the suit, she sent a copy to the HOA's insurance company, along with all the evidence she'd gathered, the meeting minutes where Patricia talked about making Michael's life difficult, the proof that Patricia had tried to buy the property herself. Everything. Then they waited. Michael tried to follow Jennifer's advice and just live his life normally. But it was hard. Patricia and her volunteers were still doing their patrols, still watching him whenever he went near the lake. The hostile Facebook posts continued. Someone even started a petition to investigate the property theft at the community lake and got over 100 signatures from neighbors who had no idea what was really going on. 5 days after the lawsuit was filed, Michael got a call from Jennifer. She sounded excited. The insurance company responded, she said. And it's even better than I hoped. What did they say? Michael asked. They're denying coverage, Jennifer said. They sent a letter to the HOA board saying that Patricia's actions appear to be intentionally malicious and done for personal gain. The insurance policy specifically excludes coverage for intentional misconduct by board members. So if this goes to court, the HOA is on their own. They'll have to pay for their own lawyers and any damages out of the HOA's funds. That's good for us, right? Michael said. It's very good for us, Jennifer said. But here's the best part. The insurance company copied all the board members on the letter. So now every single person on that board knows exactly what Patricia has been doing and why. And they know they could be personally liable if this continues. Do you think they'll do anything? Michael asked. I'd be shocked if they don't, Jennifer said. Nobody wants to pay thousands of dollars out of pocket because their HOA president has a personal grudge. Jennifer was right. 3 days later, Michael saw a post on the community Facebook group. It was from the HOA secretary, and it said there would be an emergency board meeting that evening. The post didn't say what it was about, but Michael had a pretty good idea. He didn't go to the meeting. He wasn't a member of the HOA. And besides, Jennifer had told him to stay away from anything HOA related while the lawsuit was active. But later that night, he got a text from a neighbor he'd never met before. Hi, I'm Tom from 2 streets over, the text said. I just came from the HOA meeting. I think you should know what happened. Can I call you? Michael texted back yes, and a minute later his phone rang. I don't know if you remember me, Tom said. I waved at you once when you were moving in. I live in the blue house on Maple Street. I remember, Michael said, though he didn't really. Listen, I owe you an apology, Tom said. We all do. Patricia has been telling everyone that you were trying to steal community property. A lot of us believed her because she's been president forever, and we trusted her. But tonight at the meeting, everything came out. What happened? Michael asked. The other board members confronted her, Tom said. They had copies of the insurance company's letter, and all these meeting minutes where Patricia talked about harassing you until you sold the property cheap. I had no idea she'd tried to buy your place before. None of us did. What did Patricia say? Michael asked. She tried to defend herself at first, Tom said. She kept saying the lake should belong to the community and that you were the one being unreasonable. But then one of the board members asked her directly if she'd called the police on you for fishing in your own lake, and she admitted it. She said she had to protect community interests. And what did everyone else say? They voted to remove her as president, Tom said. It was unanimous. Well, except for her vote, obviously. Then they voted to send you a formal apology and to settle your lawsuit. They don't want this going to court because it'll cost way too much money. Michael sat down. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. They're going to settle? That's what they voted for, Tom said. The new interim president is a guy named David Chen. No relation to you, I guess. He's supposed to reach out to your lawyer tomorrow. They want to resolve this as quickly as possible. Wow, Michael said. I don't even know what to say. I just wanted you to know, Tom said. And I wanted to apologize personally. I signed that stupid petition she was passing around. I feel like an idiot now. You bought that property fair and square, and Patricia manipulated all of us into thinking you were the bad guy. It's okay, Michael said. You didn't know. Well, I should have asked more questions instead of just believing her, Tom said. Anyway, I hope things get better for you now. And hey, if you ever want to teach someone how to fish, I've always wanted to learn. After they hung up, Michael just sat there for a while, trying to process everything. Was it really over? Was Patricia really gone? The next morning, Jennifer called him. I just got off the phone with the HOA's new president, she said. They want to settle. They're offering $45,000 to cover your legal fees, damages for the harassment, and punitive damages. They'll also send a letter to all residents explaining that your property is private and was never part of the HOA. What about Patricia? Michael asked. She's been removed from the board, Jennifer said. They're also going to vote on banning her from serving on the board in the future. But here's the thing. They're only willing to pay for the HOA's portion of the lawsuit. Patricia's personal liability is separate. If you want to continue the case against her personally, you can. How much would that be? Michael asked. We asked for an additional $25,000 from her personally for the defamation and personal harassment, Jennifer said. But I'll be honest with you, Michael. Getting money from an individual is harder than getting it from an HOA. She might not have that kind of money. We could win the case and then spend years trying to collect. Michael thought about it. What do you think I should do? That's up to you, Jennifer said. If you want to make a point and hold her accountable, we can push forward. If you want this over with so you can finally enjoy your property, you can accept the HOA's settlement and drop the personal case against Patricia. Michael took a deep breath. I want it to be over. I just want to fish in my lake without being harassed. Then I'll tell them we accept the settlement, Jennifer said. They want to finalize everything within 2 weeks. What happens to Patricia? Michael asked. Well, she's off the board, Jennifer said. And once the HOA sends out that letter explaining what happened, everyone in the neighborhood is going to know what she did. Sometimes public embarrassment is more effective than money. Over the next 2 weeks, things changed fast. The HOA sent out a letter to all residents explaining that Michael's property was private and included a formal apology for the confusion and inappropriate actions taken by former board leadership. They didn't name Patricia directly, but everyone knew who they meant. The settlement was finalized. Michael got $45,000, which covered all his legal fees and left him with about $20,000 extra. Jennifer said he'd earned it for everything he'd been through. The patrols stopped. The hostile Facebook posts disappeared. Patricia's account even vanished from the community group completely. People stopped giving Michael dirty looks at the mailbox. A few neighbors even stopped by to apologize personally, just like Tom had. One Saturday morning, about a month after everything was settled, Michael woke up early and grabbed his fishing rod. He walked down to his dock, cast his line into the water, and just stood there in the quiet morning air. Nobody was watching him from the trail. Nobody was taking pictures or taking notes. Nobody was calling the police. It was just him and his lake and the fish, exactly like he'd always dreamed it would be. He caught 3 bass that morning, not huge ones, but decent size. When he was done, he cleaned them in his garage and cooked them for dinner. They tasted like victory, but Michael's story wasn't quite over yet, because a few weeks later, something surprising happened that he never expected. About 3 weeks after the settlement was finalized, Michael got an unexpected email. It was from David, the new HOA president. The subject line said, "A genuine request, no pressure." Michael's stomach dropped when he saw it. He'd been enjoying his peaceful mornings fishing, and the last thing he wanted was more HOA drama. But curiosity got the better of him, so he opened it. The email was nothing like the threatening letters Patricia used to send. David started by apologizing again for everything that had happened. Then he wrote something Michael wasn't expecting. "I know you have absolutely no reason to trust the HOA after what you went through," the email said, "but I wanted to reach out with a request, and I want to be very clear that this is completely optional. If you say no, That's totally fine and we'll never bring it up again. Michael kept reading. The community trail that runs along your property has a section of fence that borders your land. It's been getting old and needs repairs. We'd like to fix it, but technically part of the fence is on your property line. We wanted to ask your permission before sending anyone over there. And if you say yes, we'd be happy to cover the entire cost of replacing that section of fence, even the part that's technically yours. Think of it as a small way to make up for what Patricia put you through. Michael read the email twice. It actually seemed genuine. David wasn't demanding anything or threatening him. He was asking politely and offering to pay for something that would benefit Michael too. Michael wrote back and said yes. He appreciated that David had asked first instead of just assuming he could send people onto the property like Patricia had done. 2 weeks later, a crew came out and replaced the old fence with a nice new one. David stopped by personally to make sure Michael was happy with the work. They ended up talking for almost an hour. David apologized again for not realizing sooner what Patricia was doing. A lot of us feel terrible about how we treated you, David said. We should have asked questions instead of just believing everything Patricia told us. She'd been president for so long that we all just trusted her blindly. It's okay, Michael said. I get it. She was convincing. Still, you shouldn't have had to go through all that just to live in your own house, David said. If there's ever anything the HOA can do to make it right, just let me know. They shook hands and David left. Michael actually felt okay about the interaction. It was nice to be treated like a normal person instead of a criminal. A few days later, Tom, the neighbor who had called him after the emergency meeting, stopped by with his son. The kid looked about 10 years old and was carrying a fishing rod that looked brand new. Hey, Michael, Tom said. I know this is probably weird, but I meant what I said about wanting to learn to fish. And my son Jake has been begging me to take him fishing for months. I thought maybe if you're not too busy, you might be willing to give us a few pointers. Michael looked at the kid who was staring at the lake with wide eyes. It reminded him of how he used to look at the water when his own dad took him fishing. Sure, Michael said. Come on down to the dock. They spent the next 2 hours fishing together. Michael taught them how to cast, how to be patient, how to feel when a fish was biting. Jake caught his first fish ever, a small bass, and the kid's face lit up like it was Christmas morning. After that, word got around. A few other neighbors asked if they could come fish sometime. Michael said yes. Soon he was having visitors every weekend, teaching people how to fish, sharing his dock, enjoying the company. One evening, Michael was sitting on his back porch when he got another email from David. This one had a different kind of request. The HOA is planning our annual community barbecue next month, the email said. We usually have it at the community center, but we were wondering if you'd be open to hosting it at your property, near the lake. We'd handle all the setup and cleanup, and we'd make sure everyone knows they're guests on your private property. We thought it might be a nice way to bring everyone together and show the community what actually happened. But again, absolutely no pressure. Just thought I'd ask. Michael thought about it for a few days. Part of him wanted to say no. His property was his private space, and he'd fought hard to keep it that way. But another part of him thought about Jake's face when he caught that fish. About the neighbors who had apologized. About the fact that most of these people weren't bad, they'd just been misled. He wrote back and said yes. The barbecue was held on a Saturday in late September. Michael couldn't believe how many people showed up. There must have been 70 or 80 people from the neighborhood, all gathered around his lake. David gave a short speech thanking Michael for hosting and took a moment to explain, for everyone who still didn't know the full story, what had really happened with Patricia. Michael owns this beautiful property, David said. He bought it fair and square. And instead of welcoming him to the neighborhood, some of us, myself included, made him feel like an outsider based on false information. So this is our chance to start over and do it right. People clapped. A few more neighbors came up to Michael throughout the day to apologize personally. One older woman even hugged him and said she felt terrible about giving him dirty looks at the mailbox. Michael set up several fishing rods around the dock and let kids take turns fishing. He must have helped a dozen children catch their first fish that day. Parents took pictures, kids laughed, and for the first time since he'd moved in, Michael's property felt like the peaceful, happy place he'd always wanted it to be. As the sun started to set and people began packing up, Tom came over with 2 beers. He handed one to Michael. You didn't have to do this, you know, Tom said. After everything that happened, you could have just kept to yourself. Nobody would have blamed you. Michael looked out at the lake, watching the last few kids fishing off the dock. I thought about it, he said. But this is what I wanted when I bought this place. Not just to fish alone, but to have a place where I could relax and enjoy life. Being angry all the time wasn't going to give me that. Well, you're a better person than me, Tom said. I'm not sure I could have been so forgiving. I'm not doing it for them, Michael said. I'm doing it for me. Holding on to anger would just make me miserable. This way, I get to enjoy my property and actually have friends in the neighborhood. After everyone left and Michael finished cleaning up, he walked down to the dock one more time. The sun had set completely and the lake was dark and quiet. He sat down and just listened to the water lapping against the dock posts. He thought about everything that had happened. The harassment, the stress, the legal battles. It had been awful at the time, but somehow he'd made it through. And now things were actually better than he'd imagined. He had his lake, he had peace, and he even had some friends. A few months later, Michael was walking to his mailbox when he saw Patricia getting into her car down the street. Their eyes met for a moment. She looked away quickly and drove off without saying anything. Michael heard from Tom that she'd barely left her house since being removed from the board. She'd resigned from all her community volunteer positions, and people still whispered about what she'd done. Michael felt a little bit of sympathy for her. She'd lost everything over her obsession with his lake. Her reputation, her position, her standing in the community. It was a harsh consequence, but she'd brought it on herself. As for Michael, he still woke up early on Saturday mornings to fish. But now sometimes Tom and Jake joined him. Or David would stop by to say hello. Or a neighbor would wave from the trail and shout a friendly greeting. His dock had a small dent in it where Patricia had hammered in that no trespassing sign. Michael never fixed it. He kept it as a reminder of what he'd been through and how far he'd come. Sometimes late at night when he couldn't sleep, Michael would walk down to the dock and look out at his lake. His property, his peace, his hard-won victory. And every single time he felt grateful that he'd fought back instead of giving up. Because this dream, this life, this perfect morning fishing spot was worth every difficult moment it took to protect it.